Namaste, viewers, and welcome to Poetry Lab with Dr. Pariksith Singh, the author of Satya Poems to My Father. You know, I'm almost regretting that we are coming to the end of this collection, viewers, because when you get into a good book, and books, we love books. Books are our life. I remember as a child reading, Dickens, and my family was alarmed because of the number of hours I would spend reading a very thick book. But as I came towards the end of a book like Great Expectations or the hardest of them, Bleak House, I didn't want it to end. So I started reading fewer and fewer pages. So I feel like that now. But anyhow, thank you for being with us in this journey, viewers. Do like, share, and subscribe to our channel. You'll very rarely find a poem which is explained by the poet himself or herself. And thank you, Dr. Singh, for being with us today. Could I please invite you to, read for us The Rose and the Flame, page 56.
The Rose and the Flame. Oh my gosh, I haven't read this poem in a while, so let me try this. The Rose and the Flame. None survives the flame of birth and death but the infinite red rose. The bud in bloom reflects the unmanifest womb, whirl by whirl. At the vine of the river it fluoresces with each twist and turn. Saved by the thorns, the rose bleeds at each wave and churn, until the last few petals, floating away, strewn across the strange twine. Within the throb of heart lives the uncertain pyre of your name.
So, once again, viewers, flame, name, first line, flame, last line, name, churn, turn. So, please be aware of all this when you enjoy these poems in your own time and at leisure, how the sounds work, and we are so conscious of sounds, now the Brahman, right from the inception of our civilization with the Vedas, where every sound has to be pronounced, and the enunciation, the intonation, the chanting is so important. All poems are chants, as Sri Aurobindo said in the future poetry. We started, the mantric poetry of the past will return, is what he says. And I see certainly glimpses of it right here. And the rose and the flame, such powerful symbols. Reminds you of Sri Aurobindo, the rose of God, and the bride of fire, flame. We've talked about the symbolism throughout this collection. Agni, you consign, whatever you want to call it, the deceased, however beloved they are. You have to break that bond and consign them to the flames. But the flames purify. They may leave just a little bit of ash, but still, we don't cling to the physical means like other civilizations do, like the ancient Egyptians did. And they started the rites of burial, which are continued in many cultures today. But the old Sanatanis or Hindus somehow said, we are not going to cling to the physical, even when we talk about the continuation of life, as we've been talking about. So I want to turn it back to you, Dr. Singh. But the rose, wow. I would say the rose is probably the most important symbol in Christendom. That is, in the entire Christian civilization. Dante, on and on. The rose, Beatrice is the rose of God, of Sri Aurobindo. And I might say, for those who are not very steeped in Christian theology, that the rose of God refers to Mary, the mother of God herself, because she's immaculate in her purity. I mean, this is a very deep symbol, and you'll see if you went to the great cathedrals, for example, even if you go to Notre Dame, you see in the in the stained glass, you see the rose as a symbol. So It's a very powerful poem, and Dr. Singh can elaborate and help us out here with the symbolism a little bit.
The Rose, yeah, it's as you said, T.S. Eliot uses it a lot in the four quartets. Rose and the flame become one at the end of the four quartets. Very powerful symbol. And then Yeats used the rose that in the depths of my heart. If you remember that very powerful enchantment that he weaves with his three poems of on the rose that are very beautiful and famous. And so here, I think the rose and the flame, probably my Eliotian connections or Sri Aurobindo's images. It's a complex poem. I didn't realize how complex it is. It weaves a strange complexity. There is the symbol of the infinite red rose, but then the river becomes a vine. And so you see along which the roses are strewn as the burial, or rather, not the burial, but after the cremation, you offer the ash and the bones to the river, and the roses are being carried, the petals are being carried along the vine of the river. But the infinite red rose is always free of all this, alive and free, eternally fresh and pure. So it's an interesting use of the word flame, because here the flame is not one with the rose in one way, because the flame has destroyed him, destroyed his body and all his vital energy. Everything is gone into ash, and yet that rose is the ultimate flame in its own way, and because it is passion, it has a different passion that is beyond the passion of the world. So I know I'm getting very Christological here,
No,
but
no, I wanted to, I actually was hoping you would bring that in because even in this poem, frankly, I definitely see the rose and the flame becoming one. And I knew it was from Eliot. I didn't want to mention it. I wanted you to talk about it. But to me, it's also, I mean, for Sri Aurobindo, I mean, people who have interpreted the Rose of God, which is a very complex poem, and
yes,
its rhythm is also complex. I guess, I mean, people have seen it that it was a poem to the mother. You see,
yes.
because the mother as Prakriti, who, as it were, abjures that moment of death, is going to lead us to, you might say, supramentalization. Let's not get too technical or esoteric, but in Eliot is following Dante, of course, because in Dante, Beatrice is the one who guides him in the afterlife. So, and Sri Aurobindo wanted divine life here. You know, in Savitri, we see that it's not the afterlife. So, I really find this as a very powerful symbolism that the rose and the flame have to become one here and now. And as it were, whenever, let's say, there's a postponement, like, you say that the asthi phool ban jate hain, hai na? So the ashes become petals, flowers, right? I mean, whenever that happens, we take it in an optimistic way that, not here, not now, maybe, but in times to come. So, yeah, back to you.
Yeah, I think it is the four quartets working subliminally through the memories. But I think Yeats, I see a lot of Yeats here, hidden in his famous two, three. I think there were three Rose poems which are absolutely brilliant and beautiful, and he invokes that inner, the soul principle, as you would call it, what we Sri Aurobindo would call it, the psychic, and the rose is a very powerful symbol, and it is never destroyed. It is always free. It is beyond all this prapancha, the movement of the five uh, elements. It is always free of those, and it is that the fire of that which is we call agni pavaka, the pure fire of the heart of the psychic being, is the real rose. It's that real pure consciousness that is always grateful, thankful, and sweet and loving. So somewhere I think that image comes through of that. I think probably you would call it Eliot, Yeats, and Sri Aurobindo coming together.
Viewers, that's a good cue for me to give you some homework. Okay, those of you, especially the younger ones, person like me, who's been a teacher all their life, I never hesitate to give homework. Sometimes I give it even to seniors, but I usually give it to younger people, those who are on the learning track. Please look up all the Rose poems that you find, not all, but a few. We've given you Dante, Eliot, Yeats, and Sri Aurobindo, and tell us which Rose poem you like the most. And compare this poem with your favorite Rose poem and tell us what you've learned. So, this is a good homework for you, especially the younger ones. And who knows, we might make a course out of some of this later in Vedere University. But here's the point, that in the Hindu or the Sanatani civilization, the most important flower is the lotus. And we have literally dozens of names for the lotus, right? In India. And many gods and goddesses and many names are associated with the lotus, even hands and feet, Kara Kamal, Pada Kamal. So everything is Kamal for us. But in the West, in the Christian civilization, it's the rose, and possibly even for the Persians to an extent. And the rose represents so many things: purity, softness, beauty, love, immortality, and the survival of the spirit. And it's so delicate. And the thorns, you see, so all of these become part of this larger narrative. That's what I'm trying to say, that poem, though it's a standalone artifact, a well wrought urn, as as we were told by Cleon Brooks and so forth. But a poem is also part of the flow of a civilization. And you can see in Satya, there is a flow, or there is a mingling, a confluence of many influences. You've heard earlier episodes, Mallarmé, Rilke, Eliot, of course, Yeats as well. And so it is in these cross currents that we find our own truth, our own beauty. And who better a representative of this grand synthesis of the human race than Sri Aurobindo, envisaged something not for any particular culture or nation, or region or language of the world, but for humanity itself. So, back to you, Dr. Singh. Some last words before we close this episode of Satya Poems to My Father.
Yeah, I remembered the line where it was far off, I think far off most dear and inviolate rose. What was that? Something like that, right? Far off most dear and inviolate rose. I think that was the famous line of Yeats. Or was it far off most distant and inviolate rose? My Yeats is rusty now. It's been a long time, maybe more than 25 years. But yeah, that was his poem. The Secret Rose, I think it was, right? So that this is the secret rose within. And Yeats, of course, was a great, great occultist and mystic in his own manner. And Sri Aurobindo had a very high opinion of him as a poet. And I think he's a great poet when it is a pure, his poems on the swans and the flowers, the roses, gorgeous poems. In fact, probably among the greatest poets of last century that we've had. So yeah, in influenced by these great poets, one attempts one's own little humble offerings, and I think all that comes through somehow, these subliminal, these veins of experience. But the experience of the rose is actually the mostly it is Sri Aurobindo's, the Aurobindonian understanding of the psychic being represented by the rose, and I think that's what came out most powerful.
Oh, absolutely, and you're right. It is the secret rose, and the line is far off, most secret and inviolate rose.
Yes,
So
far off
you
mostly.
know, far off, most secret. In fact, now that I mean, this is triggering so many things in me, and I must say, viewers, that if you like what we are doing in the Poetry Lab, we don't want to stop after we finish Satya. We will then pick up select poems, maybe of Sri Aurobindo or of Yeats or of Eliot, and we will discuss these poems. We will enjoy them together in our poetry lab. And maybe I can also read a few poems, and you can send some yourself. Please join us. We want you to be a part of this Poetry Lab. It's not that you have to be passive viewers. This is not TV where you just keep watching. We want you to join and interact, and technology gives us this opportunity. With these words, we
Maybe
bring our episode to a
we should
close.
read maybe we should read your poems on your father. Remember that confluence. There are some
Confluence.
very
Yeah,
beautiful poems there.
we can certainly do that, or as I was saying, we'll invite viewers as well. If they send us poems, we
Yes,
can select one poem for each episode so they get a platform,
yes,
because poetry is so hard, both to write and to sell and to continue to be a poet in today's world is so difficult, but we treasure it. We believe that the word is sacred, and the wordsmiths need the respect that sometimes society doesn't give them. So this will be a good platform for everyone who loves poetry, who enjoys poetry, who wants to write poetry, and who wants to discuss poetry. So these ideas are coming to us even as we evolve, on
yes.
Auroveda. So do join us again, share, like, and subscribe our channel. And thank you, Dr. Singh, for your time and for your words of wisdom.
Thank you.
Namaste.